Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The house was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed down on you until it felt hard to breathe. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kimberly's face. So small, so innocent. Tomorrow would be the funeral, but something didn't feel right. It had been so sudden. One moment she was here, alive, and the next gone. How could I have lost her without warning? I sat in the living room, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock my only company. The coffin, small and white, sat in the guest room down the hall. I hadn't been allowed to see her since the doctor declared her gone. Caden had insisted it was for the best, saying it would be too painful for me. He claimed her body had deteriorated too much. But why? Why would her body be in such a state? It was then that I heard it, so faint I almost thought it was my imagination. A small, muffled sound. Help. My breath caught in my throat. I sat up straight, heart pounding in my chest. I listened again, straining my ears. Was it my grief playing tricks on me? But then it came again, slightly louder this time. Help me. I jumped to my feet, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. My legs shook as I rushed down the hall toward the guest room. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and there before me sat the coffin. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't possibly have heard, could I? My hand hesitated over the coffin's lid. Every logical part of my brain told me this was madness. Kimberly was gone. We were preparing to bury her. But the voice, that voice. Slowly, I lifted the lid, my heart nearly stopping as I stared down at what should have been a lifeless body. But there she was, Kimberly, alive, her small hands bound, her eyes wide with fear. Her tiny lips trembled as she whimpered, "Grandma, help me." A gasp escaped my lips. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I reached in and pulled her into my arms. She was so light, so frail. I could feel every rib through her thin dress. How had this happened? Why was she here, alive but tied up, in her own coffin? "Shay, sweetheart, I'm here," I whispered, my voice shaking with disbelief. "I've got you." Kimberly clung to me, her little body trembling. She was too weak to even cry properly. My mind raced, 1,000 questions swirling, but there was no time for answers now. Caden and Cheryl, they couldn't know that I had found her. I had to protect Kimberly. I glanced out the window and saw headlights approaching. Panic shot through me. Caden and Cheryl were coming back early from the hospital. My heart raced as I looked around the room. I needed to hide her. "Kimberly, we need to be very quiet, okay?" I whispered urgently, trying to soothe her. "I'm going to hide you, just for a little while. Everything's going to be all right." She nodded, too exhausted to respond. I gently placed her inside the linen closet, wrapping her in a blanket to keep her warm. Closing the door softly, I stood there for a moment, frozen by the enormity of what had just happened. The front door creaked open, and I heard Caden's voice booming through the hallway. "Mom, are you still awake?" His tone was too cheerful, too casual. It made my skin crawl. "I'm here," I called back, trying to steady my voice. "How's Cheryl?" Caden appeared in the doorway, a broad smile on his face. "The baby was born 2 days ago. It's a boy." "A boy," I repeated, forcing myself to smile. The news shouldn't have stung, but it did. My son had always wanted a boy, and now he had one. Kimberly was never enough for him. Caden's smile faltered slightly as his eyes flicked toward the coffin. "Did you open it?" he asked, his voice tight. "No," I lied, feeling my pulse quicken. I couldn't bring myself to look. He seemed to relax, his smile returning. "Good. It's better that way. You don't want to remember her like this." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, barely able to contain the fury boiling inside me. What kind of father could say something like that? "I'll leave you to rest," he said, turning to leave. "Tomorrow will be hard." As his footsteps faded down the hall, I exhaled slowly, my knees trembling beneath me. Kimberly was alive. My granddaughter had been left to die in a coffin. And Caden, my own son, had lied to me. There was no turning back now. I had to protect her. I had to uncover the truth. The morning sun filtered weakly through the curtains as I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling around a cup of tea. The events of last night played over and over in my mind. Kimberly, alive, chained in her coffin. Caden and Cheryl had returned, oblivious to what I had discovered. I had spent the night keeping Kimberly hidden, wrapping her fragile body in blankets to soothe her into sleep. Before that, I fed her, because she was very hungry. I couldn't let this continue. Whatever Caden and Cheryl had done, whatever their reasons, I had to face them. But the fear of what they were capable of chilled me to the bone. The kitchen door creaked open, and Cheryl stepped in, rubbing her eyes. She looked tired, worn from her time at the hospital with the new baby, but I couldn't forget the emptiness in her gaze whenever she had looked at Kimberly. "Morning," she muttered, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Morning," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but my heart pounded with every second that passed. I watched her, waiting for the right moment to strike. Cheryl leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Finally, I spoke, my voice tight with tension. "I need to talk to you about Kimberly." She looked at me over the rim of her cup, her face showing no emotion. "What about her?" The coldness in her voice sent a shiver down my spine. "I know she's alive, Cheryl," I said, my voice trembling. "I found her last night." For a moment, Cheryl's eyes widened in shock, but it quickly vanished, replaced with a blank, detached look. She set her cup down slowly and crossed her arms. "You shouldn't have gone looking. What have you done?" I whispered, standing up from the table, my knees weak. "She's your daughter. How could you?" "She's nothing to us," Cheryl interrupted, her voice harsh. "Caden and I wanted a son. Kimberly was an inconvenience. An inconvenience." My chest tightened, and I felt the room tilt as her words sank in. My mind struggled to process what I was hearing, but there was no denying it now. They had planned this. "You were going to let her die," I spat, my voice rising with disbelief. "How could you even think of doing something so monstrous? Your own child." Cheryl's eyes narrowed. "We couldn't afford another mouth to feed. We already had plans for the future, and Kimberly was a burden." My heart pounded in my chest, the rage boiling inside me. I slammed my fist on the table. "You're talking about a 2-year-old girl. Your daughter. You were going to bury her alive." "We did what we had to do," she replied coldly, taking a step closer. "Don't act like you know what's best for us." "Where's Caden?" I demanded, my voice trembling with fury. "I want to hear it from him. I want to hear how the two of you could plan something so evil." "He's at the hospital with the baby," Cheryl said with a shrug, as if the conversation were nothing more than a minor inconvenience to her. "There's no point in dragging him into this. What's done is done." "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's far from done. I'm calling the authorities, Cheryl. I'm taking Kimberly away from both of you." Cheryl's eyes darkened. "You're not taking her anywhere," she hissed, stepping closer until she was inches from my face. "You think you can walk in here and take control of our lives. Caden will never let you have her." The tension in the air was suffocating, but I stood my ground, my voice hard. "I'm not giving you a choice. I will protect Kimberly, no matter what." Cheryl's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Good luck proving anything. You have no evidence." I stared at her, my hands trembling with rage. Evidence or not, I had to act. Kimberly's life depended on it. As Cheryl turned to leave the kitchen, her indifference only fueled my determination. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them destroy my granddaughter's life for the sake of their selfish desires. Gripping the phone in my hand, I dialed the number for Child Protective Services. I stood in the doorway of the dimly lit living room, my breath shallow as the weight of what Cheryl had confessed settled over me. Kimberly lay asleep on the sofa, her tiny body wrapped in a blanket, as if oblivious to the nightmare she had been spared from. My fingers hovered over the phone, my mind racing with the enormity of what I was about to do. The sound of the front door creaking open startled me, and I quickly placed the phone down. Caden stepped into the room, his face drained of color, as if the last few days had hollowed him out. In his arms, he cradled their newborn son, swaddled tightly, his eyes locked onto mine, filled with exhaustion but no remorse. "Where's Cheryl?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "She went upstairs," I replied, my voice cold. "We need to talk, Caden." He blinked at me, as if trying to muster some semblance of emotion, but all that came out was a tired sigh. "Not now, Mom. I've just gotten back from the hospital. The baby." "I don't care about the baby right now," I cut him off, my voice sharp. "I know about Kimberly. I know what you and Cheryl were planning." His body stiffened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by a mask of indifference. He shifted the baby in his arms, his jaw clenched. "You don't understand," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "Then explain it to me," I demanded, stepping closer to him, my voice trembling with anger. "Explain how you could abandon your daughter, how you could bury her alive, and walk away." Caden's hands tightened around the baby, his eyes darting toward Kimberly on the sofa. He swallowed hard, his face pale in the low light. It wasn't supposed to get this far. "Cheryl and I." He paused, his voice faltering. "We didn't want her. We needed the money, Mom. We thought this was the only way." "Money?" I repeated in disbelief. "You were willing to sacrifice your own child for money." "We were desperate," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "The debts, the bills, it all piled up. We thought if we faked her death, the insurance payout would give us a fresh start." I stared at him, horrified. "You were going to let her die for a payout." He didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the baby in his arms, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. My mind raced, trying to process what I was hearing, trying to find some shred of humanity in the son I had raised. But all I saw was a man who had lost himself, lost everything that mattered. "I can't believe this," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "You were going to let her die for money, Caden, your own daughter." He shook his head slowly, but there was no denial, no attempt to justify what he had done. He knew there was nothing left to say. I turned away from him, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no more time for words. Kimberly's safety was all that mattered now. "I'm taking her," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm taking Kimberly, and I'm reporting this. You and Cheryl will have to face the consequences." Caden didn't stop me. He just stood there, silent, as I reached for Kimberly, gently lifting her into my arms. Her tiny body stirred, but she remained asleep, her breathing soft and peaceful against my chest. As I turned to leave, Caden's voice, low and broken, echoed behind me. "I didn't know it would come to this, Mom. I didn't know." I paused for a moment, but I didn't look back. "You should have known." And with that, I walked out of the house, Kimberly safe in my arms, leaving behind the son I no longer recognized. The next day, I arrived at Caden and Cheryl's house just before dusk, my heart pounding as I stepped onto the creaky porch. The weight of the impending confrontation pressed heavily on me. Kimberly was safe at a friend's place, away from the chaos, and tonight, I was ready to finally face the truth once and for all. The door swung open before I could knock. Cheryl stood in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. Her eyes darted nervously as if she had been waiting for me, knowing this moment would come. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, glancing behind her, as though Caden might emerge at any second. We need to have another very serious conversation, Cheryl. No more lies, no more dodging the truth, I said firmly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. My voice was steady, but inside, my nerves were frayed. This was it, the final showdown. Cheryl's hands trembled as she closed the door behind me, her breath quickening. "Caden's not here," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "He's out." "I'm not here for Caden," I interrupted, my eyes locked on her. "I'm here for the truth. Why did you two think you could get away with faking Kimberly's death? Why did you think she didn't matter?" Cheryl's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I saw the mask of composure slip. "You don't understand," she stammered. "We didn't want to hurt her. Not really. It got out of hand." "Not hurt her." My voice shook with disbelief. "You left your 2-year-old daughter to die, chained in a coffin, Cheryl. How can you say it wasn't meant to hurt her?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "We were desperate," Cheryl whispered, her voice cracking. "After the baby, after he was born, everything changed. We couldn't manage both of them. And Caden, he was sinking under the debt. We thought it was the only way." I shook my head, my heart pounding in my chest. "You thought killing your daughter was the only way to escape your problems?" Cheryl sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "It was Caden's idea," she mumbled. "He said it was for the best, that we could start over with the baby. He convinced me." I felt anger rising inside me. "Convinced you?" I scoffed. "You're her mother, Cheryl. You should have protected her." Cheryl lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes pleading. "I tried, but Caden, he wouldn't listen. He said Kimberly would be better off, that we could make her death look like an accident." I could barely contain the rage boiling within me. "You're both responsible," I said through gritted teeth. "Kimberly deserves better than this, and she will get better. I'm taking her away from you both." Cheryl sobbed softly, but I had no pity left to offer. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, it swung open, and there stood Caden. His face was hard, his eyes cold. "You've gone too far this time, Mom," he growled, stepping inside. "You think you can take Kimberly from us?" "I am taking her," I said calmly, refusing to be intimidated by his towering presence. "And you won't stop me." Caden took a step toward me, but I didn't flinch. "You think you're better than us?" he snarled. "You think you can just walk in here and play the hero?" "I'm not playing anything, Caden," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I'm protecting my granddaughter from the inhumans she was born to." His eyes darkened, but before he could say another word, I spoke again. "I've already reported you both to the authorities. You'll be hearing from them soon." The silence that followed was heavy. Cheryl's sobs grew louder as Caden's face drained of color. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. I turned and walked out, the door closing behind me with a final, resounding thud. This battle was over, and Kimberly was safe. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft golden hue over the room. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching Kimberly sleep peacefully beside me, her small hand clutching the corner of her blanket. Her face, once pale and hollow, now had a healthy glow. The nightmare was finally over. I quietly got up, careful not to wake her, and made my way to the kitchen. The house felt different now, lighter, more alive. The burden of fear and uncertainty had lifted since the confrontation with Caden and Cheryl. Kimberly was safe, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hope stirring within me. As I brewed coffee, I thought about everything that had happened. The authorities were already building a case against Caden and Cheryl, and Kimberly had officially been placed in my custody. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal battles, court hearings, and a long road to recovery for Kimberly, but I knew we'd get through it together. The soft padding of little feet brought me back to the moment. I turned to see Kimberly standing in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her teddy bear clutched tightly in her arm. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to her level. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, her thumb slipping into her mouth as she shuffled over to me. I scooped her up, holding her close, feeling the warmth of her small body against mine. "Are we going to see Daddy today?" she asked, her voice small but curious. I hesitated, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No, not today, honey. But we're going to do something special. Just you and me." Her eyes brightened at the mention of something special. "What are we going to do, Grandma?" I smiled. "We're going to the park, and then we'll have a picnic. How does that sound?" Her face lit up with excitement, and she nodded eagerly. "Can we bring my teddy bear?" "Of course," I said, kissing her forehead. "Teddy can come too." The morning passed quickly as we prepared for our little outing. I packed a small basket with sandwiches, fruit, and Kimberly's favorite juice, while she excitedly grabbed her teddy bear and some crayons for drawing. It was simple, but after everything we'd been through, this felt like a monumental step toward healing. At the park, Kimberly ran across the grass, her laughter filling the air. I spread out the blanket under a large oak tree, watching her play. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to breathe, to appreciate this moment of peace. As she ran back to me, breathless and smiling, I realized how much strength Kimberly had. Despite the horrors she'd been through, she was resilient. She would grow up with love and care, and I would make sure she never felt unwanted again. "Grandma, look. I drew you and me." Kimberly held up her drawing, a simple sketch of two stick figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. "It's beautiful, darling," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. I hugged her close, whispering, "You and me, together, always."